All right, so you guys, I have some good news and I have some bad news. The good news is that I can talk about just about anything that you guys want to talk about today. The bad news is that I can talk about just about anything that you guys want to talk about today. So I've got a little deck, and the topic that Eric and I discussed for today is really kind of like about different ways to fund your early stage business, because there's a lot of different options, and a lot of people have a tendency to just kind of like default themselves into venture capital and seed funds and things like that. And for a lot of businesses, that's just a bad call. So a little bit about my background. First of all, I was born and raised in Encinitas, California. I wasn't actually born in Encinitas. My family lived in Claremont when I was born, but I was born at La Jolla. And I've lived in Encinitas my whole life. I live in Leucadia right now. I do have chickens in my backyard. That's Eleanor. She is the aggressively friendly chicken. But I spent the last decade as a managing director at Techstars. Techstars is kind of one of the premier startup accelerators in the country. And so I've invested directly into 136 early stage companies. A couple around San Diego that you might know. Crafter.com is one. Trust and Will is another one. But out of 136, it's a lot. And what we would do is we would invest a little bit of money and a lot of love, and we would run these 3-month accelerator programs where founders would come in and they would co-work with us for 3 months, and we would surround them with a network of mentors and investors and people like me who have a lot of startup experience, who can help them figure out kind of like how to get done the things that you need to do as an early stage founder, right? And when you're an early stage founder, there's a set of things that everybody deals with, right? Like, what am I selling? Who am I selling it to? How do I finance my business so that I can sell it to them? Like, how do I hire people? How do I raise money, right? And so we'd spend a lot of time working on those things, because most of us like start businesses not because we're like, oh, I love using QuickBooks on Saturday, right? But because like I've got a customer who has a problem that I'm really excited about solving. So the gist for today will be, we'll talk about kind of like some of the different ways that you could fund a business. We've got a little bit of a section where I can talk about incubators and accelerators in particular, if anybody has questions about those. Is anybody considering an accelerator program for your company? Okay, well maybe we can skip through that a little bit faster, right? And we don't need to go into as much of that. Also, if it's helpful, I'm in the process of closing my own angel round right now, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about how that's gone and what that's been like and how I've run that process, which has been like super introspective for me as somebody who's like coached people on fundraising, like to actually go out and fundraise. It's fucking hard, you guys. Like, I thought that it would be much easier and it wasn't. So my goal for today is answer a bunch of questions, right? Like, that's the thing. How many people here are thinking about raising money? Raising money, raising money, raising money? Why?
For my vertical is something that is very risky.
Okay.
So fundraising is always a challenge, but there's so much.
But I mean, why do you want to fundraise in the first place?
Because that's what my preferred clientele, right? Basically, I work with them, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, on the fundraising side. Could be non-dilutive too.
Okay.
Or commercialization strategies.
All right. What kind of round are you thinking about raising?
Pre-seed.
Pre-seed? $500,000, $750,000 or something? Why?
I have a product that is working, and I have a demand for it.
Okay. Cool. And what are you thinking about raising?
I need to fund services that can be rendered right away.
Okay. One of the things to think about, like when you're fundraising, is like anytime you sell something, and when you're fundraising, what you're doing is you're selling company stock, right? And so your company stock has a customer, and there's like an ideal customer for that company stock, and there is something that your customer wants to get in return for their money. And so anytime you go out and fundraise, you have to really understand that customer dynamic. Your customer in this case happens to be an angel investor or a grantor or a bank that's going to lend you money or whatever, and they all are buying what it is that you're selling with some desired outcome coming back to it. But one of the things to really think about when you go into fundraising is that depending on how you decide to finance your business early, you're really making like a long-term decision about what the ultimate future of your business looks like, right? Like if you put your business onto a venture path, like then you have an obligation to build a venture scale business and provide venture scale returns, right? There's a thing that people are calling now, called like, what are they calling it? Seed. I don't remember what the name is. But the whole idea is like you raise a seed round and that's it. And like that's the only round that you ever raise. But every time you make a decision about how to go out and get capital for your business, what you're doing is you are committing to a path that your business will take for the rest of your business's life, right? And so it's really important, like when you start like on that early stage, that you make smart decisions and learn as much as you can about your business and frankly about yourself, like as you go. Like some people are just meant to be the, out front CEO of a company that's got 1,000 employees spread around the world, right? Some people are, and I found this about myself, right? Like some people are designed to work with a small group of people in a little office in person and things like that. And so depending on how you finance your business, your investors are gonna have different expectations of you and your company. And so making sure that you make those decisions early on is really important. So seed strapping, that was what I was trying to figure out, right? It's like bootstrapping, but taking in a little bit of money. Like if you raise your pre-seed round, Olu, is that right?
Yeah.
If you raise your pre-seed round and then don't raise any more, right? Like that's seed strapping, right? So that was the phrase that I was trying to come up with that I couldn't remember. But the idea is that you can think about lots of different ways to get early money, and these are just some of them, but the first one that's probably like the easiest and the least committal is bootstrapping, right? Because when you bootstrap, you're either funding it out of your own pocket if you've got the ability to do that, or more than likely funding it out of customers. This is 99% of the time the right path for services businesses, or what you're selling is your time, because you can like swap time for, I don't know, swap an hour for $300, right? Swap an hour for $100, swap an hour for $60. And like, you're just swapping hours for time. And so whatever it is that you're providing, like you don't really need to like raise any money to do that. This is also becoming something that I think is really interesting, that we used to be in this situation where the ability to be able to build something was a moat, right? Like if you could write code, ship a product, set up an AWS instance, like whatever it is, that was something that not everybody could do. And so if you could do that, then you could bootstrap a small software company or a small SaaS, or a SaaS as a plus services or something like that. And now, how many people in here have like built something with AI? Like everybody. And now how many of you like who just put your hands up are not engineers? Right? Like that's nuts. Like the fact that we can, I've built a couple of apps now and I can't code my way out of a bag, right? Like in 3 years ago, like that would have been something that was inconceivable for me. And now I've got like actual real products, some that I just use for myself, some for my family, like one that's public. You can, by the way, you can sign up for my newsletter, whatsupencinitas.com, where I built an AI backend for aggregating events that are going on in Encinitas on the weekends. And I write my own newsletter, but I use my AI for research and keeping my database updated and things like that. So anyways, whatsupencinitas.com, you can all get my newsletter. And then you'll find out about all the cool stuff going on in Encinitas every weekend. So I'm a big fan of bootstrapping. Loans are another way to get started. The tricky thing about loans is that if you're gonna go out to a bank to get a loan, you're gonna need to like demonstrate like revenue, ability to pay, and all those kinds of things like that. One of the things that a lot of people fail to consider is that you can get loans from like private individuals too, right? Like you can get a loan from your mom, right? You can get a loan from your dentist, right? You can get a loan from just about anybody. And so you don't necessarily need to, and they're not gonna have the same kind of gates that a bank is gonna have, like to require you to get loans. SBA loans are designed a lot for like people purchasing businesses that have like existing revenue streams and things like that, much less for startups that are unpredictable and don't have those kinds of streams yet. But like, one of the things that I think people like overlook a lot is the fact that you could write up any agreement with anybody for any financial arrangement that you want to. And so oftentimes like going out and being like, oh, like, you know, I've got a wealthy uncle, right? Or a friend of mine is a VP at a business, right? Like a lot of times you can find a person to loan you $100,000 on some kind of payback schedule, which could be a lot easier than going through a bank. Does anybody know Andy White at Buyback Ventures?
Yep.
Yeah, so buyback is almost similar to a loan in that they're going to invest in your company, and basically what they hold is they hold company stock as collateral. And then as your company makes money, you're basically buying back your stock over a period of time, 3 years or whatever, out of revenues. And at the end, they've made like 3x their capital, which is great for them because that's their target. But you own 95% of your business again, right? Rather than 50% of your business. And so I think that's kind of like the thing that I want to take around that bullet point is that loans don't have to be bank loans, right? They can be creative financing tools that you put together with whoever.
So like, those called full friends and family, right?
So friends and family fall into like a couple of different categories, and a lot of it depends on kind of like the structure of the financing. Your friends and family could be angel investors, right? Like in my round, mom and dad invested 25 grand, right? I'm very grateful for like, A, I got parents that are able to do that, and B, I got parents that are willing to do that. But friends and family, generally, like when people say that, they're talking about friends and family investing in kind of like on a standard safe note is like the most common usage of that. Is everybody familiar with a safe and what a safe is? Yes? If anybody's not, do you want me to explain it real quick?
Think about like a metal safe.
No, not that. Good question. I'm glad that you asked though. Because honestly, there's nothing safe about a safe. YC invented them. It's called a standard agreement for future equity. And the idea behind it is that I'm going to give you some money now, right? And when people invest in your company, like when you hear the phrase seed round or Series A or Series B, basically what each one of those events is an issuance of a new class of stock, right? When you incorporate your business, you start out with what's called, if you incorporate as a C Corp, right? You start out with what's called common stock, and those are the founder's shares that you own. So like you incorporate, you own 100% of your business at the very beginning. And when you raise a seed round or when you raise a Series A, you're not selling the shares that you own to somebody else. What you're doing is you're creating new shares. So you incorporate your business, say, with 1 million shares. And then you're going to raise a Series A. What you're going to do is you're going to create another 500,000 shares of this Series A stock, and you're going to sell those. So now you still own 1 million shares, but you've got other people that own 500,000. So now you only own 66% of your business and they own 33% of your business, right? So that's what happens when you fundraise. With a SAFE, what happens is that you take their $500,000 now, but you don't issue those shares yet. What you do is you say, at some point in the future, I'm going to issue those shares, and you will receive those shares at an agreed upon price that we're going to agree to now, either through a cap or a discount is generally how they do it. But the thing to walk away from when you think about a SAFE is just remember that it's a promise for future shares that do not currently exist at some kind of discounted rate. Safes are easy because they're like a 3-page document. You can get them done, pull them offline. I highly recommend always having a lawyer look at anything, but you could also have Claude or ChatGPT look at it. And like for the most part, they're really, really standardized. So back to your question, Laura, like when people say friends and family, usually what they're doing is they're taking 50,000 or 100,000 or 20,000 or whatever onto a safe and making the promise that in the future, when I raise a future round of financing and actually issue shares, you'll be part of that, but at a price that's discounted back to today.
And it's the option to get the shares for the money, usually, right?
Say again?
It's like an option to buy the shares.
It's not an option, like it's a prepay,
Okay.
right? It's kind of like, when you do a Kickstarter, right? I give you my money now and 4 years later, you send me a board game, right? Like, it's kind of like that, except instead of a board game, it's shares of stock, right? But friends and family could also give you a loan, right? Like you could borrow money from, your uncle or your neighbor or whomever for whatever reason. That's okay, good, yeah. So that gets into angels because angels tend to invest like on safes. And the whole idea with an angel investor is like they are not necessarily friends and family, although they can be. And the interesting thing about them is that they all have different motivations, right? The first thing is they're hard to find, right? Like you got to think about how many people do you know that have the money to be able to splash 100 grand into your business, right? Like God, that's like a small percentage of the population to begin with that just got that kind of scratch lying around. So a lot of times with angel rounds, what you're looking at these like smaller rounds, right? $100,000, $250,000, which are still large amounts of money. But those angels are typically going to invest with a safe. And their goals are one of 3 things, right? The number one and most important thing about an angel investing in you is that they are normally investing in you because they want you to be successful. the amount of money that they're putting in generally is such a small and tiny fraction of what their total portfolio is that if you lose it, like they're not going to be feeling a lot of pain or anything like that. So generally, like what they're looking for is they're looking for your success. Another big thing that they're interested in is that they are interested in the space that you're working in. So you're working in like women's health, right? Like, oh, I'm very interested in women's health. I'd like to invest in your business, right? And then the third reason why angel investors invest is for money, right? Like to get an ROI on an investment. And so when you're pitching an angel, one of the things that's really important is to understand and take the time to know why they would be considering it. Like, why are you investing in me? Like, I'm just finishing up my round for Founders & Co., which is a private membership community for North County-based founders. And angel investors are investing in my round for a couple of reasons. The financial return is probably the least important for any of them. Most of them are investing because they believe that an investment there is an investment in supporting a broad ecosystem of founders, right? Not directly with a financial return, but indirectly through my mission, which is create a great space for founders to work together to build great companies. Accelerators and incubators are interesting. I'll pause for a quick second, see if we got any questions yet, because I talk fast and a lot. Any questions yet?
So, can I just share how I funded this company that I wanted to sell?
Yeah.
It was a mix of all of that. So it was a friend of family that he said, okay, I like you, like I see that your group is like trying to do stuff, and I appreciate that, so I'm gonna fund you. But he gave us a contract that if we didn't meet certain goals, we had to like give up more stock.
Okay.
We didn't meet the goals, obviously. So everybody got demotivated because we didn't have any more, like we were like losing stock before that thing started.
Yeah. Was that in Mexico?
Yes.
Okay, so that's really interesting. There is a tendency for US-based tech people to be the most founder-friendly. Like when you get outside of the United States and you go to places like Mexico or you go to places like Europe, what winds up happening is investors tend to like really put the screws on you. And so when you feel like you're really getting the screws put on you, like here, like it's important to recognize that like there's a lot of places. Like I spent some time investing in London for a while, and like the types of terms that you would see from European investors were just like, what the hell? Like, are you kidding me? Like this would like never fly in San Francisco. That's interesting. I think the thing that I would pull out of that is when it comes to financing, like if you can dream it, you can do it, right? Like you can put all kinds of if-then clauses into a contract. You can put all kinds of dates or milestones or payment plans that get waived under certain conditions. Like you're not limited to a standard document that you can download from the internet. By the way, another really great resource for standard documents, the law firm Cooley has a site called Cooley Go, and Cooley Go has like open sourced a lot of early stage legal documents, and so that's a really great place to go, and you can like pull documents from that. But like whether you're taking loans or doing an angel investment or whatever, right? Like the key to remember is like you have lots of flexibility, and investors have lots of flexibility too, right? Because they can be like, I'm only going to invest in you if you hit these milestones, and if you don't hit these milestones, I'm going to claw some stuff back, right? Like they can say that. Nobody is like obligated to give you money, right? And that's a really important dynamic to understand, because I could say like, look, I'll invest $50,000 in your business, but only under the following conditions, right? You're under no obligation to take the money, right? And that's kind of like where the whole idea of like, how do you put together a set of terms that work equally well for yourself and your investors like come in. So I'm gonna spend a minute talking about accelerators and incubators just real quick, because a lot of people kind of like think through those as an early stage financing tool. And there's a difference, like people are like, what's the difference between an accelerator and an incubator? And I use the idea of the birds in a nest, because typically, by the way, this is not AI. This like deck was like pre-AI image generation. And so this is like an actual comic that I found on the internet and then stole from whoever the creator was, which I feel bad about, but I'm gonna get through that with you guys. The idea behind an incubator is it's kind of like a safe space for you to experiment, take time and figure things out, right? Accelerators tend to be really good when you are ready to jump out of that nest, right? Because what an accelerator does is it gives you money and it gives you a finite period of time. And the accelerator's goal is that when you come out, you are ready for whatever the next phase is, right? And so an accelerator is going to look at your company and say like, okay, I believe she's building a great business and that she will be successful at some point in the future, regardless of whether you come through my accelerator, right? However, I believe that with my help and with my network and with my money, I can get you there faster, right? And so accelerators don't invest in businesses where they've got question marks as to whether or not those businesses will be successful, right? They invest in businesses where they believe that the business is going to be successful with or without them. And then their objective is get you there faster, right? So what they're doing is they're taking the slope of your line and shifting it up to more of an incline, right? So that your growth rate goes faster. And they do that by helping you solve problems, helping you with network connections, helping you with meeting investors, helping you tell the right story so that you can get funded quicker, right? So think about incubators as places where you can learn the things that you need to learn, right? And accelerators as places where it's go time, right? Like we're gonna bust it for 3 months or 4 months or 2 months or whatever your program does with a very well-defined goal at the end of it, right? Does that make sense? Like in terms of the difference between incubators and accelerators? Cool. All right. I want to talk a little bit about kind of like before you go fundraising, because fundraising is like the end result of like a long process, right? Like if you are fundraising, there's this French cook. Any cooks? Anybody cook? Okay. There's a concept. It's a French concept in cooking called mise en place. Anyone know what that is? You know when you like watch a cooking show and like all of the ingredients are like already chopped and they're like in those little bowls and they're pre-measured, and so the chef just comes through and is like, you take a little bit of cayenne and you put the peas in the thing and they're just going, you're like, how do they cook so fast, right? It's because they've prepared everything in advance, right? So the 2 hours before the show aired, they're sitting there cutting carrots and like measuring the salt and like, you know, getting the cup of water like so that it's exactly 2 cups or whatever. And so they do all of this work in advance. So then when it's time to cook, all they got to do is cook, right? Turn on the water, dump it in, wait 3 minutes, dump it in, wait 3 minutes, dump it in. And so they're not leaving anything to chance while they're cooking, right? Your fundraising like works the exact same way, right? In order to run a good fundraising process, the whole idea is like be ready to go like before you go. So what does it mean to be ready to go? The first thing is and the most important, and ironically, the thing that most people skip is have an investable business, right? Like, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to go out and fundraise. You're like, great. Like, is your business investable, right? And this is like a objective question, right? This is not subjective, right? I'm going to clarify that a little bit because I never know if you're going to go and have a meeting with somebody who's like, yeah, I'm in, here's $500,000. Like sometimes that happens. More often than not, it doesn't, right? So what does it mean to have a business that's investable? Anybody?
People can benefit from it in the future. The investors will benefit.
Okay, yes.
Validated customers.
Validated customers is good. You're like onto something there.
Clear product, service.
Like here's the thing. The way that I think about an investable business is that you have de-risked some of your most important assumptions, right? Typically, important assumptions in early stage businesses are there exists a customer for this, right? That customer has money and is willing to part with it in exchange for my solution, right? I can deliver the solution in a way that actually solves their problem, right? Once their problem is solved, they are grateful to me, right? Like those are the kinds of things where it's like, if you're going out and trying to fundraise prior to that, what you're asking for is people to give you money on an unproven belief, right? Now, sometimes that happens. I was having this conversation with a founder the other day who's asking me like, this is my traction, is that good enough to raise money, right? The answer is yes, right? Whatever your traction is, it is good enough to raise money, right? But if you think about every component of your business, right? Your business exists on this set of spectra that goes from not great to wow, that's amazing, right? Your product, right? Not great to wow, that's amazing. Your team, not great to wow, that's amazing, right? Your sales or your customer discovery, not great, all the way to wow, that's amazing. And so every component of your business exists on those spectra. You can fundraise when everything is way off to the left, right? It's going to be a lot harder than like if you can imagine fundraising when everything's way off to the right. So there's never this like unlock that says you have to be here before you fundraise. You can fundraise whenever you want, right? But the farther you can push each of those slider bars off to the right before you start, faster your round is going to go, easier round is going to go, better your terms are going to be, the better your investors are going to be on your cap table, right? So the key things become, how do I know that my slider bars on each one of those spectra are farthest off to the right? Any guesses?
Customer demand.
No, you go and ask investors, right? Like if what you want to do is raise money, like what you're selling is stock. And so you're like, okay, is the buyer of this stock like getting what they need from that person? And so you go and do that. So here's the secret to fundraising. Is taking time before you fundraise to talk to investors, right? And the real big advantage in talking to investors before you go out and fundraise is you're not asking them to make any decisions, right? What you're doing is you're saying, this is my business, this is what I do, this is what my traction looks like. What would it be about this business that would make it an attractive investment for you, right? And the crazy thing is they'll tell you, they're like, oh, well, we like to invest in things that are, at least $100,000 in annual recurring revenue, right? Or we really like highly technical founders who have built a technically challenging product, right? Whether they have any customers or not. But if you can go out and have a handful of these kinds of conversations with investors, like before you start your fundraising, they will give you a sense of where does your business need to be in order to have a successful fundraise, right? And that's an incredible advantage then when you go out to raise actual capital, because you can go back to those people and you can be like, hey, you said that you would be interested in investing in this business when I had $100,000 in ARR. I have $106,000 in ARR, right? And you can know because they'll tell you like what kind of milestones you have to get to. And investors tend to look at I call them the 3 T's, right? There's your team, there's your technology, and there's your traction, right? And I wrap up into technology product also. It's like, like say you are a hat maker, right? Like this is your hat's a much better example because that's a much more like crafted. There we go. That hat is the perfect one, right? Like the hat maker who made her hat, like that's technology. So if you think about technology as wrapping up your product in addition to any kind of like technology, your team is you, any co-founders, any employees, and your traction is customers, money, like those kinds of things. And so investors will tend to like have a lens of like those 3 sliders. They might refer to it differently, but in some way it's like, it's a slider on each one of those spectra, right? Push those as far to the right before you go out fundraising. So the other thing to be ready to do before you go fundraising is your mise en place is things like have an investor pipeline ready to go. Know who your introducers to each of those investors are going to be. Have your deck ready. Have feedback on your story and your pitch so that you know that what you're saying is something that resonates. Be all the way ready to go so that when it's time, you just start sending out the emails. Hey, I'm fundraising now. Can I get on your calendar for the week of July 9th or whatever it is? I guess we're in August already, you guys?
Almost.
The hell? Erica, slow it down. Oh, she's not here. And then you just go, right? Then all you're doing is dumping ingredients into your pot. So make sure you've got an investable business. Make sure that you are set up and ready to fundraise, and then just run your process. So, all right. We just kind of went through that again. All right. This kind of goes back to the key thing that Bob was talking about, which is this concept of validation, right? And Galena, we had this conversation too, right? Where you've got like all these open questions. And when you go out to fundraise, you're not going to know everything about your business and what your business looks like in the future. So the key thing to think about as an early stage fundraiser is, what are the things that began as question marks that I now know to be true? Or what are the things that began as question marks that I have proven to have been wrong about, and what did I do about those things, right? So when you think about validation, like the way to think about it is not confirmation of an idea that you've already got, but tangible proof that an assumption that you made is correct, right? So you go, okay, there exists a customer in the world that wants to buy my product, right? We all believe that to be true. What's your product that you're building?
It's a web service for vocal analysis.
Okay, you believe that there's a customer. Who's your customer?
Public speakers.
Public speakers. Okay, me?
More like
Tony Robbins?
More like less public, but like TikTok users,
Like influencer kind of people?
influencers, yeah, who want
Okay.
to hone their vocal brand. And
Cool. So you got some product. You have a hypothesis that there are TikTok speakers who would use this to hone their vocal brand or whatever. And do you know that those people who you just defined want this?
no,
No. Okay. See, okay, perfect. Great. What's your name?
Dominic.
Dominic. Okay, dope. Dominic's got a great example here, right? Like, have you built this thing yet?
The hard part. Yeah.
Stop building it, right? Stop building it, okay? And here's why, okay? You don't need to stop building it. First of all, nobody needs to do anything that I say, because I'm wrong like so much. I say so many things that there's like an inevitability that half of them are not going to be true. You're going to spend a lot of time. I'm assuming you've spent some money. There's probably been some AI tokens that have gone into this. You know, you maybe like, you know, got a server space, like you've bought some hardware and things like that, and you're like spending money. You might be super rich, I got no idea. But like, let's say that you go out and you build this thing, you spend $10,000 or $20,000 or like that, and then you go to all these TikTok influencers and you're like, I'm gonna help you tune your vocal brand. And they're like, dude, what? Like, or they're like, oh, that's really great, is it free? Right? And so one of the key things here is like, as you go along, identifying early on what are the questions that you have, and one of your questions should always be, is there a customer that exists who I can identify and find, who is willing to pay me money in exchange for what I have built, right? That is generally your highest risk assumption, always, right? There's some customer that I can identify and find who recognizes this problem and is actively looking for a solution for it, and has budget and a willingness to give me some of their money in exchange for my ability to solve that problem for them. And that is, honestly, you guys, 9 times out of 10, your highest risk assumption, right? There used to be, a couple years ago, somewhat high risk assumption, which is I can build the thing that solves it. And that barrier is dropping a lot, right now. Like, it's mind-blowing what we can build. But anyways, validating that there is some customer who wants what you're selling and is willing to pay you money for it, right? So how do you do that? Well, if I was you, Dominic, what I would do is I would put my code away and I would just go talk to TikTok influencers. And I would be like, here's this thing that I'm building, how much would you pay me for it? And some of them might say, oh, dude, I'd give you $1,000. Like, now here's the thing. If I go, oh my gosh, I totally want that, that's great, I'm gonna give you $1,000 for it. What do you know?
That somebody is willing to part with what they're.
No, you do not know that, and here's the reason why. And the key word there is that there's a future conditional in that statement, which is I would give you $1,000 for it, right? And that would does a whole lot of work, right? What that would does is it says under some undefined future set of circumstances that may or may not exist, I might give you $1,000 for it, right? So that future conditional tense of the word would, like, does a lot of work, because here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna go talk to a lot of people and they're gonna go, that's a really great fucking idea. I love that idea. That's an amazing idea. Oh my gosh, so many people are gonna want that. How many people have heard those statements about your business, right? How much have you sold?
No, they are just have potential.
Right, exactly, right? Because you have a bunch of woods, right? And so the only way, and the three of us talked about this earlier, the only way to know what the conditions of a sale are at some point in the future, right? To shift from I would buy that to I will buy that, right? Are to ask for the sale, right? So you go like, okay, I got this thing. It's going to help you tune your vocal brand, right? And they're going to go, dude, that's genius, man. Like, you're the smartest person on the planet. What an amazing product this is. Game changer. And your next line is, will you put $100 down for it today? Right? And what are they going to do?
Backtrack.
They're totally going to backtrack. They're going to go, no, I'm not going to do that, right? And then this is your opportunity. Your opportunity is to be like, why? What needs to be true in order for you to give me this money, right? And now what that does is that leads to a whole new set of questions that you go out and you validate that process for, right? And so a lot of times what people do is they're afraid to ask people for money. And this is true if you've got a services business. It's true if you've got a product. It's true if you're like selling like a big government contract or whatever. Has anybody ever bought a used car? You go to the used car dealer, what do they ask you? Like, what's it gonna take to get into this Buick today? Right? Like, what if I throw in some floor mats, right? Like, what they're doing is they're saying, they're challenging you to put the money in. And when you hold off, they're like, all right, what are the conditions under which I get your money? And they're like, oh, okay, fine. I'm gonna wax the headlights and I'm gonna throw in some floor mats right now, right? I'm gonna drop it $500, right? Oh, I'm gonna give you the extended warranty. Like, and what you're doing is you're defining a set of conditions under which you'd be willing to exchange money for a car, right? And your product is no different. So when you go out to fundraise, even if you haven't sold any yet, right? Having asked for the sale helps you understand what the list of things that must be true about your value proposition are, and you can incorporate those things into your story. And it's a key thing that people miss when they're validating a lot. Because like what they'll do is they'll go out and they'll be like, what do you think of this idea? Right? And what are they going to tell you? Oh, what an adorable baby you have. That's the cutest baby I've ever seen. Everybody's baby is the cutest baby anybody's ever seen, right? Nobody ever goes, dude, that is one ugly kid. Right? Like, so what you've got to figure out is kind of like, what are those conditions? Now, you don't necessarily have to satisfy them, but by knowing what they are, you push your slider for product just a little bit to the right, right? And the more you repeat that, the further to the right your slider gets. So that's kind of what you're thinking about there. This is just kind of like a note about traction. Does anybody know what this equation is? Algebra people? It's a line, right? Y equals mx plus b equals a line. So when you're fundraising, there's a line dynamic that exists around valuations, right? And so if we're breaking this down, right, y equals mx plus b, m is your slope and b is your y-intercept, right? We're going back to our basic algebra, remember this?
Slope-intercept.
Right, slope-intercept, right? And so it creates this triangle, right? So your slope is, for every unit this way, how many units this way does it go? And b is, where on the y-axis does it cross, okay? This y-axis is, you can think about it, that's my sales, right? I'm at $10,000 in monthly recurring revenue, right? And so your B is your sales. So you can think about that like sales. Okay, so I'm at $10,000. Now, both of these guys have $10,000 in sales, right? They're both crossing through that y-axis at the same exact point. Which company is more valuable? Right? It's the second line that I introduced to you. Why? Because it's got a steeper slope. Right? So when you start thinking about kind of like what are the milestones that trigger fundraising, you can't just look at like, oh, I can fundraise when I get to $10,000 in monthly revenue or $2,000 or whatever. Because the important variable is the pace at which you are crossing through that point, right? So everything goes back to those sliders. Like, can this guy raise money? Yes, right? This guy's gonna have an easier time, he's gonna get better terms and a higher valuation, right? So be thinking not just about the milestones that you have achieved, but the momentum that you have crossing through them. And that becomes like really important, right? Because one of the things that like I wish that I had done better on my raise is I took a long time to do it, much longer than I had wanted to, right? And so I had some people be like, I don't know, Ryan, this raise is taking a long time. Like that raises question marks, I'm out, right? So the faster that you can do these things and identify, like, not just how fast your raise goes, but how fast you're doing product, how fast you're adding customers, the speed with which you do things is a better multiplier on your valuation and your leverage than whatever your y-intercept is, okay? So anyways, that brings us back. This is our summary page here. As you go through these things, right, just kind of remember to, you can come up with whatever financial agreement you want to with anybody. You can get loans from anyone. You can bootstrap. Nobody's forcing you to raise VC. In fact, VC, I don't know, Erica, do you know the stats on this? Like the number of companies that are VC, it's like 3% or something like that.
Small. It's less than 5.
Right, so if we look around this room, like how many of us are going to be venture backed? Statistically, none, right? And you are all like smart, talented, ambitious, right? Statistically, none of us will be venture backed. And so it's really important to kind of consider, what kind of business do I want to have? What kind of CEO do I want to be? How fast do I want to have pressure to grow? Because as soon as you start getting down into kind of like this VC range, like what you're doing is you're committing to lots of growth at a high speed. And for some people, that's great. That's exactly what they're looking for. For some people, like for me, like that's not me right now. So anyways, that's just a general overview of kind of like early stage fundraising, the different types of tools that you can use to get. Accelerators, I kind of like skipped through this, think a lot like VCs, right? How fast can she go? How fast can we get her to where it is that she needs to be in order to get the stuff right? So anyways, I'm gonna stop talking and just answer questions for the rest of the time. We can talk about whatever you guys want. I've got about 15 minutes and then I gotta hit the road. But until then, I can answer any questions on almost any topic. Anything?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
When companies are raising funds for whatever route they want to go, is it always somebody internal to the company that's doing the fundraising, or do they sometimes outsource?
Never outsources. Okay, so here's the thing, especially when you're small. Like now, if you are getting ready for your IPO, right? You'll have a team of bankers and things like that that are working on it and setting up meetings with these institutional investors and flying you around on the private jet and all that, but that's not you, right? When somebody other than this, and it's not just somebody internal to the company, right? It's the CEO, right? Is that you? Are you the CEO?
Yeah.
Okay, it's you. You're fundraising at this stage, right? And the reason is because you're not raising from VCs, right? Like, are you thinking about a round?
No.
Okay, then you don't have to worry about it, which is great. But like, if you are thinking about a round, like a CEO has 3 jobs and only 3 jobs, right? CEO is like a really interesting role. Does everybody know what the 3 jobs of a CEO are? I'm gonna tell you, so if you don't want to answer, you don't have to, because I'll just say it. The first job is point the ship in the right direction, right? This is what we're building, this is who we're building it for, this is the way that we're gonna do things. We're going that way, y'all, right? Thing number 2 is put the right crew on board, right? Get the folks that know how to tie the right knots, get the folks that are like really good at rowing oars, get the folks that can navigate, right? You get all the right people on board the ship. And then the third job of a CEO is give them the resources that they need to be successful, right? Now you go like, oh, I'm the CEO of a 1-person company, right? Well, then like when you think about give them the tools that they need to be successful, you're actually writing code and building things and doing sales and doing all of the things yourself, right? Even with a 2 or a 3-person company, the tools that it takes for your team to be successful are sometimes just you doing stuff, right? But if you think about the 3 roles of a CEO, right? And these are nobody else in the company's responsibilities, right? And this is like the really interesting thing about being a CEO and the hard part about being a CEO. Point the ship in the right direction, assemble the right crew, and give them the resources that they need to be successful. What that means for fundraising is investors are going to expect to hear from and talk to the person who is in charge of making those exact decisions, because those are the decisions that impact where a company winds up. And so it's not always, but it is always the CEO who does the fundraising. Good question though, I like that one.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, hear your objections because I don't want to like burn people. but no, I know I can practice with you. So as I'm working on a service
Yep.
for regulatory and reimbursement services for
Yep.
women's health startups. So it just helps them go through FDA and get insured through employer or Medicaid or something like that.
Yeah.
So if you know that every woman that is in your life could benefiting from, like we talked to Eric, speculum, right?
Yep.
Or some menopause product or something like that. So what would make you want to invest in
Okay.
something like that, or more like donate? Right?
This is a really important question that she just asked, and it's not because of the business that you're running in particular, but it's because of this disconnect between, do I believe that a business is important, and do I believe that you, as a CEO, can execute on this business and make it successful, right? So when you're gonna ask somebody don't you think that women's health is important,
Yeah.
right? Everybody at this table, raise your hand if you think that women's health is not important, right? Everybody agrees with you there, and that's a very dangerous position to be in, right? We used to refer to it as happy ears, right? Because people will be like, yes, very important, right? Gotta have this, right? This has to exist. And you go like, oh, great, I've got an idea that everybody thinks is very important and it has to exist. But that's not necessarily what you're being evaluated on, because that's not a business, that's an idea. And you can have a great idea and a horrible business, right? They're not correlated at all. You can have a great idea and a great business. You could also have a really shitty idea and an awesome business, right? So the quality of your idea and the quality of your business are distinct from each other, right? So you go, what would my objections be? My objections would be, you have not yet found a customer that you have proof is willing to pay under a set of known circumstances, right?
You mean like other sponsors, right? Or like corporate sponsors?
Anybody, right? Where does money for the business come from? And until you identify that, that's what my objection would be, right? We got to solve that. And this is true if you're doing your business. It's true if you're doing vocal tuning for TikTok influencers. It's true if you're doing, pharma stuff. It's whatever it is that you're doing, that's generally one of the biggest objections. An investor is going to want to know that this founder knows who their customer is, can find them, and that customer is willing to pay them under a known set of circumstances, right?
I'll add to that.
Yeah.
And that's basically all the feedback we've been hearing with investors. So we have a ton of pilots.
Yeah.
But the number one question is, have you converted them?
Yeah.
To paid customers?
Right.
And that's the.
And it's just not
biggest hill to
the have you converted them is your y-axis,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Your slope on a line like that is at what rate?
Yeah.
And under what set of conditions did those conversions happen, right? And so there's all these things being oh yeah, we converted 3 of them, right? The follow-up question is oh, what was it about those 3 that had them convert that the other ones didn't? And if you can't answer that question, it doesn't matter if you've converted them, right? Because you haven't identified that customer and the specific set of circumstances under which they would buy,
Problem.
right? That's the challenge to get to.
So you need to see some traction first.
Yeah.
Well, but remember, traction gets defined in lots of different ways,
Yeah.
right? Traction is not revenue. Traction is not lines of code shipped, right? Traction is dangerous assumptions validated, with data, right? Now, a lot of times that's revenue, right? Because if you're I talked to 100 people and every single one of them paid me $1,000, it's pretty good, right? You kind of know all of the other things because you have to know them in order to convert 100% of your leads into customers, right? Nobody does that, but your understanding of their needs and your ability to solve them for a particular price point under a particular set of circumstances is assumed to be true because you've demonstrated an ability to do it, right? So when you say traction, you got to be really careful. Everybody's going to define traction differently. Here's the thing. Every business, I just want to make sure I'm not breaking anything. Yeah. Every business sits on the same curve, right? There's a curve that if you look at kind of the bottom left of your chart, right? Which is hey, I got an idea. Why don't we, right? Like that's like every business starts there. It's at exactly 0. And up here in the very top of your curve is like drinking the champagne after you ring the bell at the NASDAQ, right? Every single business exists on this curve, right? Same curve, right? They're at different, like the differences are they're at different points and they are moving at different speeds, right? But every business is still on that curve. Down here in this very bottom corner, identifying customers over here, figuring out how to scale here, executing for scale, right? And every business moves along that curve the same way.
Yeah.
So.
And so, were you gonna add anything?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay, so earlier we talked, because my business, it's not, it's not investable, right? So it's probably, like you said earlier, you wouldn't give money to a for-profit business. It would have to be a nonprofit, right?
Well, it depends on how you're asking for the money, right? Like if you're asking as an investment, as you're asking as a donation,
Yes.
if you're asking as a purchase, right? So there's lots of different ways to have somebody give you money. And the key thing is like, what's the mechanism that gets them to part with it, right?
A sponsorship, let's say a sponsorship, does it, I'm actually not sure, is a sponsorship always a write-off or
No.
not? Okay.
Usually it's not a write-off, right? It's an exchange for marketing services.
Okay, great.
It's an expense line.
So if we're talking about a sponsorship,
Yeah.
so let's say I'm offering you to sponsor an event or that supports women's health.
There's nuance in all these things. Like if you are a nonprofit that's asking for sponsors to the event, really what you're saying is give me a donation in exchange for a larger donation. I'll put your name on the sign.
Let's
right.
say it's a for-profit.
So it's a for-profit, then what you're doing is you're saying, give me some money for this event and I'll put your name on the sign. But you can't write it off as a tax write-off.
Right.
Right, that's the biggest
Yes.
difference.
So what would make it worth it for you? I mean, like the people that are the medical device companies?
Very important
your
question right here. Okay,
service.
here's the thing. The only person who can answer that question, first of all, is it me? No, I can't answer that question. Can you answer that question?
Sorry, I wasn't
No.
there. Yeah.
Like nobody can, the only person who can answer that question, right, that hypothetical would you under these circumstances is the actual customer, right? So sitting in a room and going, hey Ryan, like, do you think it makes sense for, do you think TikTok influencers would pay for this? It doesn't fucking matter what I think.
Yeah.
It's totally irrelevant, right? Like unless I was a TikTok influencer, right, which I'm not, right? But like, and this is why it's important that people like me, or whoever's sitting to your left or your right, are really great at being like, maybe your story works better this way, or maybe try this angle, or something like that, right? Getting a diverse set of viewpoints on a story or whatever is great, but a hypothetical, would somebody else pay for this? The only person who can answer that is the potential sponsor, the TikToker, right? The pharma company, I don't know, whoever you sell to, Olu, like those are the only people who can answer it. And so the most important thing that you can do is talk to them, right? As much as you can.
Yeah.
Set it as a KPI, right? Be like, look, I'm going to talk to 10 of these people per week. I'm gonna have 10 one-hour meetings per week with this particular target customer. And then just over and over and over again. You can never talk to too many customers. Once that, you know those CEO jobs there, right? Where number one is point the ship in the right direction. Do you know how you know what the right direction is? Like CEOs talk to customers all the time, right? They're like, hey, my ship's going this way. And the customer will be like, that's really great, but it'd be terrific if you tacked to the left a little bit, right? CEO comes back, guys, we're tacking to the left, right? And the reason that I know that is because like that's what it takes for my business to grow. And I talk to those customers and they tell me what I need to hear.
Yeah. Well, let's say that, you have, women in your life and they're like, oh my gosh, we're struggling so much with this, pap smear visit, and there's a solution, right, with the speculums, right? And they say, well, I wish there was somebody who would fund something like that, and what would make you donate to a nonprofit, I guess? What would be your objection here?
Okay, this is where you're gonna have to be really super careful because here's what I would say, like, I don't even know that that's a real problem, right? Because my wife did not come back from her last appointment and talk to me about those things, right? So I would be like, nope, not me. But here's what you can cross out. Can you cross out men? No. right? You can cross out married men, no. Married men whose wives' appointments were a certain amount of time away, who did or did not talk to them afterwards and express some particular, and so finding that person is really, really difficult, right? So the most important thing becomes like, how do you get as close to, like, are you guys familiar with the term ideal customer profile? Okay, so an ideal customer profile always starts out as a hypothesis that changes over time, right? You're gonna start with some hypothesis about who this customer is. You're gonna find a bunch of that person, and then you're gonna go talk to as many of them as you can. And after you talk to a bunch of them, what you're gonna do is you're going to rewrite that ideal customer profile hypothesis. My ideal customer is men who are TikTok influencers between the ages of 18 and 25. And they TikTok about football, right? Okay, great. I'm gonna go talk to 30 of them, 20 of them, however many of them there are. And then you're gonna come back and you're gonna, I learned something, right? I learned that not as many of them have this problem as I thought, and that the problem wasn't as severe as I thought. I'm going to revise my hypothesis now that it is women, right? Then you're going to talk to a bunch of them. And you're like, oh, it turns out that the older women identified with this product more than the younger women did, so I'm going to move my age range up. Or it turns out that the people that talked about baseball instead of football like tended to have more. And what you're constantly doing through these conversations is refining that ideal customer profile until eventually what's going to happen is you're going to have that ideal customer profile to a point where you can predict that when you go to talk to somebody who meets that profile that they're going to say yes. Right? So it's a constant process of reinvention. Nobody can tell you you have a good idea. You have a great idea. You have a great idea. You have a great idea. Your idea is terrific. Everybody here, your ideas are all brilliant, right? Nobody can tell you whether your idea is good except for the person who you are going to ask to part with real money in exchange for that idea. It's the only person that can tell you. Everybody else's opinion doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm curious, I mean, with the dynamic of AI, that willingness to pay, I feel is also becoming more and more challenged, right? In this environment where everyone kind of thinks I can do it on my own through AI or Claude.
Yeah.
Do you see that, or have you spoken?
It depends on what the it is, right? There's lots of things. Like in my business, I had 3 months and $50,000 like allocated for developers. I don't think I need that anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I need that. Now, am I a developer? No. Like, if I did pay a lot of money to somebody who's really smart, could they do it better? Yes. A lot of the calculus that goes into that is, what does good enough look like, right? And so there's a lot of things like, would I trust Claude to review a legal document? No. Would I trust Claude to help me figure out what questions to ask my lawyer who's reviewing my legal document? Of course I would, right? So, now I go back to my lawyer with like, this paragraph, this clause, this paragraph, this clause, red flag here, like, what do you think? Rather than my lawyer taking it and giving it to a paralegal, and a paralegal doing all of that at $300 an hour, and then give it back to the. So the answer is like in degrees for different use cases. Like, I think the answer is 100% yes, right? Like, my personal take is like, I'm not going to have an AI do my design work. I've got a human working on that for me, for example. But like reviewing a lease, like, yeah, like what's standard, non-standard, those kinds of questions. Help me brainstorm. Here's who I think my customer is. Help me refine my ICP, and then go out to LinkedIn and find me 50 people who match this ICP. Great job for an AI, right? But would my ICP buy this? Bad job for an AI, right? Yeah. So you guys, I have gone over and I have an appointment that I need to get to. This has been super fun. Like, you can find me on LinkedIn at Ryan Kuder. But like, I have enjoyed this. I am appreciative that y'all gave me some of your time this morning to let me talk about startups, because it's the thing that I love doing more than anything. My new business is called Founders, and here's the plug. This is the plug part. My new business is called Founders & Co., and I'm building a network of hyper-local private founder communities with my first one in Encinitas this year. And the idea is taking everything that I've learned over the last 10 years working with founders and running startup accelerators and making it accessible to founders without needing to give up 8% of your business. And so it operates on a monthly membership fee, and you've got a clubhouse to come and hang out with other founders, and you've got me, and you got folks to chop it up with about your business whenever you want to have that. So that's the play. You guys, thank you. You guys have been awesome, and this has been super fun.